Security, escort this gentleman out, please.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go. Today we're with our first legislative candidate, Eric Leggett, for our video series here. Also, Jeff Barf will be joining us later today, but not during this session because that would be weird. And Eric is in District 15 and he's running for House, and there's 4 of you running, correct?
Yes.
And we don't need to name them because they're not here.
Right.
But and you are the only independent candidate running in that race?
Ooh, there's actually 2.
There's 2 independent candidates?
Me and Mike Myers.
Okay.
I will say his name.
Okay, we know Mike. We know Mike.
We know Mike.
Anyway,
cameraman Bruce is here too.
Yeah. Cameraman Bruce is here in the background. So I'm gonna make this really simple. You can start out. Just give us a short bio about who you are and why you decided to run.
Sure. Well, I've lived in Sioux Falls my entire life. My dad owns a painting company here and also flips houses. So it's kind of funny because in my district, I think there's as many as 40 or 50 houses that he's done over the past.
Oh, wow.
Over the past 40 years. I've lived in the north end of Sioux Falls in District 15 my entire adult life. I married my high school sweetheart when I was 20, so we've been married for 5 years now. Okay. And we have a 4-year-old son named Liam. I'm currently a senior at the University of Sioux Falls. The reason I decided to run, I think that I ran in 2014 as well, but this year is really interesting because I think perhaps more than any other year, people are tremendously frustrated with the 2-party system. And they feel like they don't have a lot of options. And I mean, I hear every day how frustrated people are with the presidential election. So I think that what is there, about 131,000 registered independents in the state of South Dakota?
I believe you're pretty close. Yep.
And they deserve at least one representative. I think another reason that I'm good for this district is I'm young. I graduated from a Cross and Boys Ranch, so I kind of know that life in this district can be kind of hard.
Okay, and why don't I let's go into a question then, because you kind of touched on it there. Do you think, being an independent, I'm also an independent too, just for the record, so people know. Do you think the one-party control in Pierre is hurting the citizens? And let me say this differently. Let's say it was the Democrats, not the Republicans. Do you think one-party rule is hurting the citizens?
That's a tough question because it depends on how we got there. I think the fact that we have one-party rule is directly reflected in the fact that people are frustrated with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has a real inability to raise money in the state, a real inability to organize. And I think that's a direct reflection of the fact that a lot of people in the state are not tremendously interested in the Democratic Party and what it has to offer. I think kind of what happened.
I left it.
Right, and I think that shows in registration numbers,
Right.
And so I think that there's something to be said there because there's a natural progression then that in a state that leans tremendously Republican for more liberal individuals to simply run as Republicans. So is it hurting the state? Well, possibly, maybe a little more balance, but on the same token, it's happened because of the ineffectiveness of the Democratic Party, not because of any sort of draconian measure by the Republican Party. But I do think that there is some frustration there, though, because as we've noticed, independent registration is skyrocketing right now. So I'd be interested to see who's leaving. Is it Democrats? Is it Republicans? Is it in equal numbers? But that's why I'm running as an independent because it gives people in this district another option. Yeah,
and I hear you there. And the thing too is that Republicans are often associated with big business, which usually has a lot more money, and when you have more money and you're running, you usually keep the power. And I've often said it's not because their ideas are better; it's just they got more money. But there's a lot of initiatives and amendments on the ballot, and we don't have to go into any of those unless you want to. Do you support the initiative and referendum process? I mean, if you're going to be on the state legislature, you might have a different opinion now because you haven't been there yet.
Right.
But a lot of elected officials don't like it because, they make a law, gosh darn it, we elected them to make laws, and that's what they're there for, and why did the citizens do this to us? But we've seen in recent years, the citizens have been overturning a lot of bad laws, I should say, in Pierre. So do you support the initiative referendum process?
I do. I don't mind it. I think it's another layer of accountability. I think that There are so many on the ballot this year that might be somewhat problematic simply because there's so many for which we need to get acquainted.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think that petitions have a right, citizens have a right to redress grievances and to petition their government. I think that's exactly what they're doing.
And you mentioned that I just got a Facebook post from Randy Dauberpool before I got here about he's a county employee, of course, and he was saying he was talking to Bob Litz, and Bob Litz said that the absentee people who have been coming in and voting, it's been taking between 10 and 30 minutes per person.
Wow.
So there's going to be long lines. I've been encouraging people, early vote, I've already voted, early vote, and that's my plug of the day, because otherwise you're going to be standing in probably some lines. Do you have a main objective? I mean, when you're going to peer, I'm sure you got a lot of ideas in your head. Mm-hmm. And of course, your first year, they often tell you, is the big learning curve. You learn where we got to learn where all the rooms are at and when's these meetings. Plus, you're an independent, so you're probably going to have to figure out who you're going to caucus with. So could you talk a little bit about that and maybe your main objectives the first year you serve?
Well, I'll start with the caucusing question.
Yeah.
I haven't made any decisions there.
Yeah.
I want to, I want to focus on winning first because otherwise it's an irrelevant question.
Yeah.
I will say, simply because of the fact that there's no Republicans running in my district, the Democrat caucus may be a little unfriendly to me because, they have low numbers as it is. In terms of main objectives, I want to be on the Appropriations Committee. I want to make sure that our fiscal house is in order. One thing I'm a little concerned about is the amount we owe in bonds. I think that really any amount of money we spend on debt servicing could probably be spent better elsewhere. So I'd like to see that number go down. Secondly, I'd like to be on the Education Committee. I know it's a really difficult committee to get onto, but I think that by virtue of us being a small state, we can implement really creative and innovative programs. We can go look around for them and implement them at a very small cost. And if they work well in some of our smaller schools, we can implement them across the state. And I think
You mean like Gear Up at EB5? Kidding.
Yeah. No, probably not those ones. Let's try something different.
Yeah.
But that actually is a great segue, though.
Yeah.
Because another thing I'd like us to do is hire more auditors and have more state contracts.
What could they possibly ever do?
Yeah, exactly.
Submit state contracts to a lot more scrutiny so we can find these conflicts of interest, hopefully before they turn into tragedies like
Right.
those two programs you mentioned.
Yeah, and you talked about education. You said you're a senior at USF. What are you majoring in, or what do you plan to do when you graduate?
I'm a history major.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I've considered law school. I don't really know that I want to go to school for 3 more years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll either probably start a business or continue to work on campaigns.
Okay, cool. And I like the history degree thing. That's very helpful in the legislative because there's a lot of people.
Liberal arts.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand history, and history is so important to legislating. I hound the reporters at the Argus about this a lot, how they change the city beat reporter every year. And it's like, how do you ever expect anybody to have a historical background on what's
Right.
going on in the city when you're changing that reporter every single year? They have to make all new contacts, but I like your history thing. But talk about the education thing a little bit. I'll just say I personally, because since I'm not a real reporter, I can give you my opinion on this. I personally did not support the sales tax increase for teachers. I kind of somewhat supported the Democrats' plan that they never went after, which I was really mad at them about, of eliminating the food tax and then raising the sales tax by a penny. I wasn't too opposed to that because I liked the factor of finally getting rid of the food tax. But I didn't support what they did. And if you did support it, tell me why. And if you didn't support it, what would you have proposed?
Well, it's funny you mentioned
Yeah.
the Democrat plan because I think actually the first person to suggest that maybe as many as like 6 years ago was Scott Munsterman. And I think Tad Perry, but I'm not sure about the second one. I know the first one because Scott told me himself. But no, I didn't support raising the sales tax. I didn't really think that was a prudent thing to do, especially in my district. We've had so many sales tax and fee increases in the last couple of years.
Just citywide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we had that big infrastructure package, which made it more difficult to get registration. I think that there were a few good plans that we could have put together. For starters, we probably should get rid of some administrators.
Right.
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 That's a very expensive.
And as we were talking a little bit before we got filming here, I said that I believe the administrator pay in South Dakota is 26th in the nation, where of course the teachers are 49th or whatever. And a lot of people have suggested, why isn't that more equal? In other words, maybe bring the administrators to 33 and the teachers to 33 or something like that, or both to 26, you know. And, you know, I also mentioned to you that, you know, you talk about different plans. Bernie Honhoff had suggested in a podcast interview I did with him that we tap into the education trust fund. And he said just the interest alone coming out of there would help to probably cover half of what this teacher pay increase was. But no one ever brought that up again. It's like a sacred cow or something. But
Right.
So what would you have proposed?
Probably a combination. I think Senator Hunhoff's idea was a good idea. We could get halfway there. And then Representative Russell brought a bill that would have redirected the lottery money, which I think was supposed to be redirected directly towards education anyways, instead of poured into the general fund, into the.
As I understand, that was a campaign soundbite, as someone told me. There was never really an intention to do that. That was just something they put in there to get people to pass video lottery.
Right. So I'm not a big fan of video lottery.
Yeah, I'm not
I'll
either.
just go in and say that. But
I
as
think it
long
costs us more than what we get out of it.
Oh, yeah.
I've said that all along.
And as long as we have it, let's use it for something useful. And I think that those two plans together would have actually probably brought in more revenue total for teacher pay. And another thing is, I think that money should have been distributed equally.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I don't like the governor's thing where he came out and punishing certain districts because they don't have enough students. And, you know, that's silly. And I think another thing that could have been even added to what you were talking to is a lot of people have issues with how the rural property taxes are distributed. And the farmers complain, well, you know, it's tight within it. But there's a lot of land, rural land, that isn't farmland. It's just rich people like Ted Turner, who owns a lot of land in South Dakota, who could pay more in property taxes. And there could have been a more restructuring on that. It actually probably could have went as far as actually giving some of us a property tax break. But hopefully that's something. I said the legislature should come back this year and repeal that stupid thing and fix it. I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, I think there is a chance that we're going to deal with it again. I don't.
Oh yeah,
know if there's
definitely,
gonna
because
be-
this never fixed any. It didn't really fix much.
Right.
And you got all these school districts complaining that they're not getting the money, and then on top of that, me knowing other people who work in the school district that are not teachers, they didn't get very good raises. So why are the teachers getting the raises and all these other people are not? So it was a bad plan from the beginning. That's all I'm gonna say on that. One more question here, and then I'll let you tap into whatever you'd like to. Do you think the Attorney General and Secretary of State's positions as elected officials should be nonpartisan?
Well, that's a good question. Well, you know, I kind of think.
In other words, they have to run as either a non-party member or an independent.
Right. I'm not really sure what a difference that would make, honestly, because, for example, once you start to run for a constitutional office, chances are you've either served in the legislature or a county commission. You're known somewhat, and probably as a partisan individual. Now, they can put you on the ballot as an independent. I can see what you mean. But the offices, regardless of your party affiliation, they need to be run in a nonpartisan fashion. I think that, and this isn't I'm not saying that. I believe Chantel's done a great job at that, and that's not a comment on Marty at all. I'm just not as familiar with
This
the
was
agency
what I
office.
told Chantel. This is the one compliment I'll give Chantel. She's not Jason Gant. Anyway.
But anyways, I want to make clear
yeah.
that my commentary there is just I don't know as much about the AG's office as I do Secretary of State.
Only reason I say that there are a few, Bruce maybe know a little bit better, there are a few states that do require that. they are nonpartisan positions. They cannot.
Secretaries, and I believe in some states, Secretary of
Yeah,
State's
they
actually
can.
appointed.
Yeah, and they can't be associated with a party affiliation.
Right.
Like you said, they're known in party circles maybe and stuff, but they're not allowed to have that kind of association. That is the question. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Sure.
For
Give me a second here because I got to roll back and see
that's
what
fine.
we covered.
We can clip. We gotta think a little bit.
Well, one issue that I'd like to talk about, and I know that we don't do it in Minnehaha County, is the forced catheterization issue. I remember an article coming out earlier this summer. I can't remember who, was it Jonathan Ellis who wrote for the Argus? Maybe it was Ellis.
Yeah. It was either him or John Holt. I can't remember either.
Yeah, and they asked a few members of the Judiciary Committee whether they thought a bill would be coming. Well, if when elected, I'm supposed to start saying when elected.
Yeah.
A bill will be coming.
Yeah.
We've already got a draft
To
out
get
ready to go.
to
Yeah.
stop that. Yeah, and I agree with that too. I mean, as a person who's been arrested and who's had blood drawn, I can tell you that if you were a sane person, you know, a lot of times in this situation, people are extremely drunk or extremely high, so it's a bad situation to begin with. But if anybody ever walked up to you or Bruce or me and said, would you prefer we took blood from you, which is just a needle in your arm, and that's not always comfortable, or would you prefer a catheter? I can guarantee you which one you would pick.
Right.
I wouldn't even think about it twice. I'd be like,
Right.
there's my arm, you know.
Well, there was a point in time
Yeah.
when we, as a country, had a debate about whether a needle was too invasive.
And I have an issue with that too. I don't believe they should be able to take blood. I think the furthest they should be able to go is a breathalyzer and a urine sample. And that's it.
Right.
And if they don't want to give the urine sample, they don't have to. I think when you're doing a field sobriety test and you're doing a breathalyzer, that should be enough evidence, you know, especially with dash cams now.
Right.
You can tell if someone's drunk if they're falling over during a sobriety test, and if they're not passing their breathalyzer, that should be enough proof in court to go, this person was intoxicated while driving. You shouldn't have to take a blood sample. You shouldn't have to take a urine sample. You know, it's a thing where they're just I look at it as they're just trying to catch you on other things that have nothing to do with you drinking and driving.
Right.
Drug use and other stuff. I don't want to get too much into
Just
that.
in control of faculty.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
And that cost tax, and this is the thing that bothers me is the county is always complaining that they don't have any money they don't have money with all these criminal cases, so many criminal cases. And why are our police force and our sheriffs out there constantly trying to pile it on every time they arrest somebody? And it's like, pull them over for DUI, convict them of DUI, move on. We don't need to start digging into all this other stuff.
this is where drug seizure laws get involved.
Yeah.
You know, property seizure starts happening if they catch somebody that's on something other than.
Right, yeah. So I like that idea. Any other ones that you would like to suggest?
Well, along with that, public safety, especially in my district, is a big concern.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we live
Because
right.
you're kind of in that area. I know 15. I used to live in 15. Pettigrew Heights is in 15,
Yep.
correct? I used to live over there. I know the neighborhood. It's one of those it's a very diverse, wouldn't you say financially diverse?
It is. It really is.
You know, you have some upper high-ender historic homes and nicer places, and then you have, you know, some apartments, and you know, it's really diverse with business too and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff going on in that area of town. I mean, we live right across the street from the shooting at the Lucky Lady that we heard the gunshots.
Yeah.
We've had a car stolen, had a car broken into, and a lot of people in my district have had cars stolen. There was a really, really big rash of car thefts.
Oh wow, yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, it was great talking to you today, and not sure when we'll get this up, but like we said, we'll try to get it about 20 minutes. So
Awesome. Thank you
thanks,
so much,
Eric.
guys. I
Yep,
appreciate it.
Yep.
Y'all come back now. Cheers.
What kind of morons run this outfit?